2016 run. My thanks to everyone who took the time to write and suggest corrections. Many changes have been made to this list based on the info sent in, and more will be added in the very near future. In compiling this list, I have tried to find as much photographic evidence as I can, but surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, these people in many cases seem to have been erased from the internet. The following is a partial list of a large number of persons who have recently met their demise in suspicious circumstances who appear to have some connection to the Clintons. I stress partial because new additions are coming in faster than closets can be found to hide the bodies in. Don Adams died January 7, 1997. Long before Whitewater's land flips made the Clinton circle of friends rich, many of the same players had been involved in a similar land swindle in Branson. Don Adams was a lawyer in Arkansas who got involved trying to help the people who were being swindled out of their life savings. Don Adams missing. Click for full-size article of Don Adams missing. Don Adams found dead. Click for full-size article of Don Adams found dead. The successor attorney for Don left for parts unknown about a year after Don was killed. John Ash, former United Nations General Assembly President, died June 22, 2016. Initially reported as having died from a heart attack, John's throat had obviously been crushed. At that point the official story changed to him accidentally dropping a barbell on his own throat. The plot line from the episode An Exercise in Fatality from the TV series Columbo, crushing his larynx. Ash was about to begin trial for a bribery charge involving Chinese businessman Ngilap Seng, who had been implicated but not charged in the 1996 China-Gate scandal for funneling illegal donations to Bill Clinton's re-election fund through Arkansas restaurant owner Charlie Tree. Ash was supposed to testify about Hillary's links to Ngilap Seng later the same day he died. Robert Bates, Barry Seals aircraft mechanic at Manor, died March 29, 1995. Robert Bates supposedly died of an overdose of mouthwash, regarded by local authorities as an obvious homicide. Gandhi Bore, attorney representing Mr. Lasseter in a case concerning alleged financial misconduct, died January 8, 1994. Died in an alleged suicide by jumping out of a window of a multi-story building. Mr. Lasseter was a close associate of Gif. Clinton, and was later indicted on drug-related charges, among other things. Bore's law partner was suicided 1 month later on February 9, 1994. Admiral Jeremy Bore Order, Chief of Naval Operations, died May 16, 1996. Admiral Bore Order. Bore Order supposedly went home for lunch and decided to shoot himself in the chest twice, using 2 guns, rather than be interviewed by Newsweek magazine that afternoon. Explanations for Bore Order's suicide focused on a claim that he was embarrassed over 2 valor pins he was not authorized to wear. Former CNO Admiral Elmo Zumwalt said on the May 17 Larry King Live show that Admiral Bore Order was not only authorized to wear the V on his medals, but that had personally authorized him to do so when he was serving as Commander Naval Forces Vietnam. When it turned out that Bore Order was entitled to those decorations, blame shifted to stresses over the downsizing of the Navy, and even, Washington Times, the adverse effect that feminism was having on the Navy's morale. Bore Order supposedly left 2 suicide notes, neither of which was released. On Thursday, June 25, 1998, Navy Secretary John Dalton formally acknowledged that Bore Order had been entitled to wear the decorations. So, like Brown, and like Foster, the proximate cause for the suicide turns out to be fraudulent. Ron Brown. Ron Brown, former chairman, DNC, Commerce Secretary, died May 3, 1996. Ron Brown died along with 39 other people when the T-43, a converted 737 used by the Air Force, carrying the group on a trip to Bosnia crashed while approaching the Dubrovnik airport. On the verge of being indicted and having stated publicly his willingness to make a deal with prosecutors, Ron Brown's death brought to an end his ability to testify. The very next day, Ron Brown's personal lawyer was murdered in a drive-by shooting. A few days later, the air traffic controller who had been in charge during the aircraft crash was found dead and declared a suicide. On leaving Ron Brown's funeral, President Bill Clinton was seen laughing and joking, until he saw the camera, then he went into his sad act. James Bunch. Influential Texan. Exact date of death unknown. Died from a gunshot suicide, similar to Vince Foster. Was discovered to have a little black book containing the names of many influential persons in Texas and Arkansas who visited certain prostitutes. Eric Butera. Witness. Died December 4, 1997. An informant who came forward offering information regarding the murder of White House intern Mary Mahoney. He was then sent into a known crack house to make an undercover buy for the police and was beaten to death. His mother was awarded $100 million in compensation, but a federal judge later slashed it to just $1 million. Karani. Kitano Karani. Witness to a shooting near the White House. Died November 11, 1994. Suffered an unknown infection just before he was to testify. Death attributed to apparent food poisoning. Click for full scan of article. Berta Cáceres. Berta Cáceres. Human rights activist. Died March 3, 2016. Killed while sleeping in her home in La Esperanza, Honduras. Berta Cáceres had named Hillary Clinton as responsible for the Honduran coup which toppled democratically elected President Manuel Zelaya. Since the coup, Honduras has become one of the most violent places in the world. Growing awareness of Hillary's role in Honduras became a serious liability during Hillary's 2016 campaign. William Colby. William Colby. Director of Central Intelligence, RET. Died April 27, 1996. William Colby had been the DCI from 1973 to 1976 under Nixon and Ford. At age 76, Colby had found a new career and had just started writing for Strategic Investment at the time of his death. This had worried many insiders in the intelligence community who felt that Colby had already divulged too many of the CIA's secrets in the preceding years. Indeed, his dismissal by Ford because of his over-cooperation with congressional investigations into CIA wrongdoing. It was Colby who had revealed to Congress the plans to kill Fidel Castro, the spying on American citizens, in direct violation of the CIA Charter, and the conducting of biological tests by the CIA on unsuspecting citizens. George Bush replaced him. According to the original CNN report, Colby was reported missing by neighbors who recovered his canoe, by one story from under the dock at Colby's house, by another report, 1/4 of a mile downstream from Colby's home. Colby was by all report a methodical, tidy man, yet police found his home unlocked, his computer on, and a partly eaten dinner on the table. The official story is that Colby just put down his fork and decided to drop everything and go canoeing. Colby at 76 was still a world traveler and consultant to many corporations. He recently became an editor of an important financial newsletter, Strategic Investment, which covered the Vince Foster suicide in detail. Its editors hired 3 renowned handwriting experts to investigate Foster's suicide note, which hadn't been found when his briefcase was first searched, but later materialized, torn into pieces, with no fingerprints on any of the pieces. Upon comparing this document with others of Foster's writings, these experts declared it was a forgery, and a not very good one at that. Colby had old enemies as well as new, with plenty of motives for his extermination. He was in charge of the infamous Operation Phoenix during the Vietnam War, in which more than 20,000 South Vietnamese citizens, supposedly Viet Cong sympathizers, were rounded up, tortured and executed. In the 1970s he opened some of the secrets of the CIA to Congress, Colby insisted on going public about the agency's role in tapping the telephones and opening the mail of Americans, plotting the assassination of Fidel Castro, and using human guinea pigs for mind control experiments involving LSD, The Times reports. On Monday, May 6, Colby's body was found just 20 yards from where his canoe had been recovered, in an area that had been thoroughly searched several times by helicopters and search teams. Most notable about the body was the absence of a life jacket, which according to his wife, Colby always wore on the water. As has since been proven to have happened in the JFK Jr. case, false stories were being deliberately planted in the media, including one quoting Mrs. Colby herself as having been told by William Colby by phone that he was going canoeing. Mrs. Colby denied any such story. The week that he died, Colby was scheduled to meet with the Disclosure Project. Suzanne Coleman had an affair with Clinton when he was Attorney General of Arkansas. Died, February 15, 1977. Died of suicide with gunshot wound to the back of her head. No autopsy allowed. Was 7 months pregnant at time of her death. She had told friends it was Bill Clinton's child. See Danny Williams. She was 26 at the time of her death. Gregory Collins. Witness to the train deaths. Died, January 1989. Greg had information on the Ives, Henry deaths. He died from a gunshot blast to the face. Declared a suicide. Keith Coney, or Coney. Witness to the train deaths. Died, May 1988. Keith had information on the Ives, Henry deaths. Died in a motorcycle accident in July 1988 while being chased by a car. Ruled a traffic accident. L.J. Davis. Reporter investigating Clinton scandals, attacked at his hotel room in Little Rock. His notes were stolen. David Dry. Died 8/1999. Pat Matrisona, owner of Jeremiah Films, which produces such vids as The Clinton Chronicles, and David Dry planned a trip to Washington, D.C. by private plane. At the last second, Pat had to cancel and David left without him, dying when the plane crashed. Daniel A. Dutko. Seat Chairman of Leadership 2000. Died, July 27, 1999. Daniel A. Dutko, 54, was the co-chairman of Leadership 2000, the Democratic National Committee's main fundraising effort. He held many other high-level political positions, including Vice Chairman of Finance for Clinton Gore in 1995, Finance Chairman of the 53rd Inaugural Ball, and Vice Chairman of Finance for the DNC in 1996, when the Chinese money poured in. Attributed to a bicycle accident in which it's claimed he struck his head on the concrete twice. 5 Navy aviators. Clinton bodyguards, escorts. Names not determined, died, the 26th of March 1993, all died in a crash of an E-2C Hawkeye in Italy. The crash occurred shortly after the plane was waved off from a landing attempt on the carrier Roosevelt. Due to a foul deck, all 5 men had been Clinton's escorts during Clinton's visit to the Roosevelt 2 weeks prior. 3 other men, who had flown Clinton to the Roosevelt for that visit, also died later in a helicopter crash. Herschel Friday. Attorney and Clinton fundraiser. Died, March 1, 1994. Killed when his plane exploded. Cause unknown. Vince Foster. Vincent Foster. Deputy White House Counsel. Died, July 21, 1993. Found dead in Fort Marcy Park in Washington, D.C., of a supposed suicide by gunshot. A suicide note was supposedly found a few days later, torn into several pieces, in his briefcase, after his office had been entered by White House staff and materials removed. The suicide note, leaked despite official efforts to keep it from view, has since been revealed to be a forgery. The gun which he supposedly used to kill himself was reported to be still in his hand, but the person who first found the body reports that there was no gun at that time. Many irregularities surround the death and the investigation of it. For one thing, Neither Foster's fingerprints nor blood were on the gun he supposedly inserted into his mouth and fired. There was no blood on Foster's hands. Foster was also from Hope, Arkansas, like Clinton, and also worked for the Rose law firm. Foster had intimate knowledge of the Clintons' personal finances. Foster was involved in an investigation of their finances, and reportedly made a phone call to Hillary Clinton, in Los Angeles, just hours before his death. Foster had been called to testify to Congress about the records Hillary refused to turn over. Another possible motive for the murder relates to the Clinton Presidential Blind Trust, being prepared by Foster, but 6 months late. Testimony during the Whitewater hearings suggests the trust was fraudulent, with the Clintons retaining control over much of their finances, in order to profit from inside information. Recently, the signed report of ME Dr. Donald Hort was uncovered at the National Archives, proving that Foster had a previously unreported gunshot wound to his neck. Finally, an FBI memo surfaced dated the day after the date of the official autopsy, in which the autopsist informed the FBI that there was no exit wound. Aldo Francoeur, Secret Service agent. Captain Kevin N. Ernest, aircraft commander. Captain Kimberly Jo Wheeluer, pilot. Second Lieutenant Benjamin T. Hall, navigator. Staff Sergeant Michael J. Smith Jr., LOAD master. Senior Airman Rick L. Merritt, flight engineer. Staff Sergeant Michael R. York, LOAD master. Senior Airman Billy R. Ogston, crew chief. Airman Thomas A. Stevens, LOAD master. Died, August 18, 1996. Killed when the C-130 carrying the presidential limos crashed near Jackson Hole, Wyoming. All 9 people on board a White House support plane were killed late Saturday, 10:48 p.m. MDT, when it crashed into Sheep Mountain, also known as Sleeping Indian Mountain, near Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The aircraft was en route from Jackson Hole to John F. Kennedy International Airport. The Air Force Lockheed Martin C-130 Hercules transport aircraft was carrying a presidential vehicle and many pieces of luggage, all related to the president's vacation, 50th birthday celebration in the Grand Tetons. President Clinton said Sunday afternoon that he was told the pilot was attempting to return to the Jackson Hole airport when it crashed, CNN News report. The Air Force reported finding no evidence of an in-flight mechanical emergency after examining the flight data and flight voice recorders, and could not find evidence that the pilot radioed mechanical trouble before crashing into the mountainside as reported by the White House. The victims included 8 crew members and 1 Secret Service agent. The aircraft and crew were stationed out of Dyess Air Force Base. 4 Marine pilots. Marine One presidential helicopter pilots. Died, April 8, 2000. Names not determined. All died, with 15 others, in a crash of a V-22 Osprey near Tucson. Witnesses reported the craft burst into flames in midair, then crashed. Kathy Ferguson. Witness. Died, May 10, 1994. Kathy Ferguson supposedly committed suicide May 10, 1994 when she shot herself in her living room. Kathy's ex-husband was Danny Ferguson, who was the Arkansas trooper who said he escorted Paula Jones to Bill Clinton's hotel room. Kathy often told friends and co-workers about how Bill had gotten Danny to bring women to him and stand watch while they had sex. Danny Ferguson was a co-defendant along with Bill Clinton in Paula Corbin Jones's sexual harassment suit. Kathy Ferguson was a corroborating witness for Miss Jones. Oddly, next to Kathy's body were her packed bags, as if she was expecting to be going somewhere. Dwayne Garrett. Radio host and Al Gore fundraiser. Died, the 26th of July 1995. A lawyer and a talk show host for KGOAM in San Francisco, Dwayne was the campaign finance chairman for Dianne Feinstein's run for the Senate, and was a friend and fundraiser for Al Gore. According to Garrett's lawyer, Garrett was under investigation for defrauding investors in Garrett's failed sports memorabilia venture. There was talk of a deal to evade prosecution. On July 26, Garrett cancelled an afternoon meeting with his lawyer because he had to meet some people at the San Francisco airport. 3 hours later he was found floating in the bay under the Golden Gate Bridge. Corporal Eric S. Fox, crewman for Marine One, the presidential helicopter, died March 22, 1999. Shot in the head, and declared a suicide. Carlos Giglietti, thermal imaging expert, died April 28, 2000. Carlos Giglietti, 42, was found dead in his home just outside of Washington, D.C. There was no sign of a break-in or struggle at the firm of infrared technology where the badly decomposed body of Giglietti was found. Giglietti had not been seen for several weeks. Giglietti, a thermal imaging analyst hired by the House Government Reform Committee to review tape of the siege at Waco, Texas, said he determined the FBI fired shots on April 19, 1993. The FBI has explained the light bursts on infrared footage as reflections of sun rays on shards of glass or other debris that littered the scene. Judy Gibbs, penthouse model and call girl, died January 3, 1986. Judy Gibbs, along with her sister Sharon, appeared in the December 1979 issue of Penthouse, and later worked at a bordello in Fordyce, near Mena, Arkansas, which also ran a blackmail operation with photos taken of the customers with their girls. According to the Gibbs family, Bill Clinton was a regular customer of Judy, and there were photos of him having sex with her that threatened his presidential campaign. While cooperating with law enforcement in a drug investigation, Judy died when her house burned down. No cause for the fire was found. Judy had called the fire department to report the fire, but her body was found on the floor in front of a ground floor window, near a door that would have allowed her escape. In a sworn statement, Clinton bodyguard Barry Spivey related how he had been with the governor when the governor's plane had flown over Judy Gibbs' house and Clinton had shown Judy's penthouse photos on the plane and pointed out the house. Paula Grober, Clinton's speech interpreter for the deaf, died December 9, 1992. Died in a one-car accident with no known witnesses. Her body was thrown 33 feet from the car, indicating a very high speed. A very attractive woman, Paula traveled extensively with Clinton from 1978 until her death. Clinton, through a spokesman, called Grober's death a great personal loss. He also said, "Hillary and I extend our sincere sympathy to Paula's family. I had the privilege of working with her over many years." Staff Sergeant Brian Haney, Marine Sergeant Tim Sabel, Major William Barkley, Captain Scott Reynolds. Clinton bodyguards, died May 19, 1993. All 4 men died when their helicopter crashed in the woods near Quantico, Virginia. Reporters were barred from the site, and the head of the fire department responding to the crash described it by saying, "Security was tight, with lots of Marines with guns." The Marines seized a videotape made by a firefighter. All 4 men had escorted Clinton on his flight to the carrier Roosevelt shortly before their deaths. Michael Hastings, journalist for Rolling Stone, died June 18, 2013. Michael Hastings died in a highly suspicious single-car accident. He had told friends that he was afraid for his life following stories he had written which were critical of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. One of the emails leaked during the 2016 Democratic Convention confirmed that Hillary had received Hastings' damning investigative report of the attack on the Benghazi consulate 5 months before his death. Stanley Hurd, Chairman, National Chiropractic Healthcare Advisory Committee. Steve Dixon, counsel to Mr. Hurd, died September 10, 1993. Both died in a plane crash outside Dulles Airport, after their aircraft, rented after Hurd's personal craft developed troubles, crashed while attempting an emergency landing after reporting a fire on board. Let's repeat that. They took off in a plane. It developed problems. They got it back to the airport. They rented a new plane. They took off in the new-rented plane and IT developed a problem. On the way back to the airport it crashed. Heard, in addition to serving on Clinton's advisory council, also personally treated Clinton's mother, stepfather, and brother. John Hillier, NBC and freelance cameraman. Died, 1996. Hillier passed away in a dentist's office from unknown causes, despite being very health conscious and in good physical condition. Declared a heart attack. Was working on an investigation into Manor and assisted with the Circle of Power and Clinton Chronicles. Sometime after his passing, his widow recalled her husband saying he felt he could be in danger. Stanley Huggins, partner in Memphis law firm. Died, June 23, 1994. Investigating Madison Guarantee. Reported to have succumbed to viral pneumonia, see attack on Russell Welch. His 300-page report has never been released. Stanley had been at a cotton carnival party on a Friday night. He was supposed to escort his wife all week during the 7-day event, but told her he couldn't as something important was going down. He has recently left a law firm in Little Rock where Hillary C. worked and set up a small office in Memphis. On that Friday night I saw Stan and spoke to him briefly. He seemed extremely nervous and about to jump out of his skin. The word circulated throughout the party that he had been involved in some secretive issue that was under the microscope. Soon after that we were told by his wife that he had flown up to a near university to give a speech on a Saturday. He checked into the provided dorm room by the university employees that said he looked fine. When they called up to his room later in the day he didn't answer the phone, so they went to check on him and found him dead. The death was declared due to viral pneumonia. His wife has tried to get the hospital records, but they were sealed by Janet Reno under presidential orders of Clinton. Over that weekend his Memphis office was broken into and the only noticeable thing taken were his files. His 300-page report was never released. Sandy Hume, journalist. Died, February 2, 1998. On Sunday, February 22, 1998, Sandy Hume, the 28-year-old son of journalist Britt Hume, was reportedly found dead in his Arlington, Virginia home. Aside from the statement that this was an apparent suicide, there remains in place a total media blackout on this story, possibly out of concern that the actual facts will not withstand public scrutiny. Indeed, it was reported in Associated Press that the Arlington police were not responding to any inquiries. Hume was a reporter for The Hill magazine, newspaper about Congress for Congress, and had broken a major story in 1997 regarding the friction between House Speaker Newt Gingrich and a faction led by Representative Paxson, who announced his resignation just 24 hours after Hume's death. In addition, Sandy Hume had just joined the staff at Fox TV News and was just 3 weeks into a job that represented the pinnacle of his young career. Oddly enough, aside from echoing the one Associated Press story, the Fox News website has ignored the death of its newest commentator. Sandy already had a reputation for getting the story that nobody else wanted to look at. It is worth noting that his death came hard on the heels of reports that a reporter was about to break a story confirming the White House's use of investigators to dig up dirt on critics. It has recently been confirmed that the man who performed the as-yet unreleased autopsy is none other than Dr. James C. Baer, who has a record of concealing homicides behind a ruling of suicide. Kenneth Starr's suicidologist Dr. Alan L. Berman has waded in again and as he did in the Foster death ruled it 100% certain that this is a suicide and can be nothing else. Don Henry Kevin Ives. Kevin Ives and Don Henry. Witnesses. Died, August 23, 1987. Initial cause of death was claimed to be the result of passing out on a railroad track in Arkansas after smoking 20 marijuana cigarettes. This ruling was reported by the state medical examiner Fahmy Malak, and supported by Sheriff Jim Steed, whose thorough investigation of the crime scene left one of the boys' foot sitting in the open for 2 days. In April 1988, Kevin's body was exhumed, and another autopsy was performed, this one by Atlanta medical examiner Dr. Joseph Burton, who discovered that Kevin died from a crushed skull prior to being placed on the tracks. Don Henry's body was exhumed and discovered to have been stabbed in the back prior to being placed on the tracks. Governor Bill Clinton excused Fahmy Malek's errors, saying that Malek was tired and stressed out. Reports indicate that Ives and Henry might have stumbled upon part of them in a drug operation, specifically a drop site in the area of Bauxite and Alexander, Arkansas. The police chief of Alexander, John Brown, acknowledged he obtained a taped confession from one of the murderers of the two boys, which was suppressed at the request of the FBI. Jean Duffy headed up Arkansas' 7th District Drug Task Force in 1990. She was never allowed to conduct a thorough investigation of drug running in Manor or any possible connection to the train deaths. Her task force and a federal grand jury were shut down after they started examining corruption involving public officials. Dan Harmon was a local government official, the prosecuting attorney for Saline, Grant, and Hot Springs counties in 1979 and 1980, and then again from 1991 through 1996. He was convicted in June of 1997 on drug, racketeering, and extortion charges, and he started serving 8 years in prison. In January 1991, long before his drug offenses became public knowledge, Harmon convinced a judge to subpoena evidence obtained by Jean Duffy's task force, evidence gathered against him and other public officials. Miss Duffy refused to honor the subpoena, fearing for the lives of witnesses, many of whom did turn up dead, and fled the state when a warrant was issued for her arrest. Gary Johnson. Witness. Attacked, June 26, 1992. Beaten near death and left for dead. Someone in the Clinton organization sent 3 goons to beat up and almost murder Gary Johnson, who was Jennifer Flowers' neighbor. Gary Johnson had a security camera installed at his condominium, and by chance he had many tapes of Bill entering Jennifer's condominium while governor and married to Hillary. Gary's tapes were taken. John F. Kennedy Jr. Potential candidate for senator from New York. Died, July 16, 1999. Within days of an NBC Dateline story hinting at a possible run for the Senate seat currently assumed to be the property of Hillary Clinton, JFK Jr. and his wife and sister-in-law died when the Piper Saratoga 2TC JFK Jr. was piloting crashed into the ocean just short of Martha's Vineyard. The Newsweek issue for the following Monday, which NBC Dateline had reported would announce JFK Jr.'s candidacy, was yanked from distributors and destroyed. Even before the wreckage of the plane had been found, the media was saturated with news stories declaring the weather to have been very hazy. The weather was VFR conditions, and 8-mile visibility, plus weather radar and witnesses on Martha's Vineyard all reported clear skies, making it impossible for JFK Jr. to know which way was up. He also had working instruments in the aircraft. As was the case when TWA-800 was shot down, the United States Navy took control of the crash site, ordering an unprecedented 5-mile-wide no-fly zone while the wreckage of the aircraft was recovered and taken to a military base. Reporters Cindy Adams and Andrew Goldman have documented the planting of false information about JFK Jr. in the media in the days following his crash. The feeding of false information to the press proves there is a cover-up. The existence of a cover-up is why JFK Jr. gets an entry on the dead bodies list. According to some reports, Mrs. Kennedy was pregnant. Jordan Kettleson. Witness to the train deaths. Died, June 1990. Kettleson had information on the Ives and Henry deaths. He was found shot to death in the front seat of his pickup. Johnny Franklin Loran Jr. Witness. Died, March 29, 1998. In the spring of 1997, a tornado ripped through some junked cars at Johnny's transmission and opened up the trunk of a car that proved to have a box of Whitewater records in it, including a copy of a $27,000 cashier's check drawn on Madison and payable to Bill Clinton. Johnny Franklin Loran, Sr. realized what he was looking at and turned the box of documents over to the FBI. According to police, Lauren Jr., the son, and a friend hit a telephone pole at a high rate of speed after their car had become airborne and left the road. They had driven less than 1/4 of a mile at the time of the accident. This manner of death is similar to the single-vehicle accidents that killed Paula Grober and Neil Moody. Sean Lucas, attorney, died August 2, 2016. On July 3, 2016, Sean Lucas and filmmaker Ricardo Villalba served the DNC Services Corporation and chairperson Debbie Wasserman Schultz at DNC's headquarters in Washington, D.C., in the fraud class action suit against the Democrat Party on behalf of Bernie Sanders supporters. This was before WikiLeaks released documents proving the DNC was working against the Sanders campaign during the 2016 primary. Sean was found dead by his girlfriend. No cause of death has been officially released. Mary Mahoney. Mary Katie Mahoney, White House intern, died July 1997. An attractive 25-year-old woman, Mary was a former White House intern for Bill Clinton working as the assistant manager at a Starbucks coffee shop in Georgetown. Starbucks. In the pre-trial publicity surrounding Paula Jones' lawsuit, Mike Isikoff had dropped hints that a former White House staffer with the initial M was about to go public with her story of sexual harassment at 1600 Pennsylvania. Just days later, gunmen entered the Starbucks while the crew was cleaning up after closing. Mary's two associates, Aaron Goodrich, 18, and Demery Evans, 25, were taken to a room and shot. Mary herself had 5 bullets in her, from at least 2 different guns, most likely with silencers. A total of 10 shots were fired, none of them heard by neighbors in the densely populated Georgetown section. Mary was shot in the chest, her face, and in the back of the head. Someone wanted her very dead. Or to send a message. Even though more than $4,000 remained in the store, the police have categorized the triple murder as a robbery, even as they acknowledge the execution-style killings. There was no sign of forced entry, which means that either Mary or one of the employees let the killers in, at least 1 hour after closing. That means that the killers included at least one person known to the victims. One report is that the Starbucks was still locked when the bodies were found the next morning. Robbers don't bother locking doors. George Stephanopoulos, Monica Lewinsky, and Chelsea Clinton were all regulars at the Starbucks. Carl Cooper, the man charged with the Starbucks murders on the basis of a confession, has now recanted that confession, claiming that it was obtained under coercion, not unlike that of James Earl Ray. An affidavit filed by Noah's Sonia Stewart confirms that the Department of Commerce was selling trade mission seats in exchange for campaign donations, and illegally blocking FOIA requests. Named in the affidavit as the White House staffer directly connected to this obstruction was Doris Matsui. Doris's assigned intern during this period was Mary Mahoney. Lieutenant General David J. McLeod, Commander of Alaskan Command, 11th Air Force, and the Alaskan North American Aerospace Defense Command Region, headquartered at Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska. Died July 26, 1998. On July 26, 1998, McLeod died when his Yak-54 aerobatic plane crashed, allegedly from sabotage. McLeod was one of several flag officers, including Admiral Border, who had assembled evidence against President Bill Clinton, leading to his arrest. Kristin M. Mirzayan, White House intern, died August 1, 1998. On August 1, 1998, yet another young female government intern with the initial M, Kristin M. Mirzayan, was murdered, beaten to death with a heavy object near Georgetown University. Eventually, Mike Isikoff's former White House staffer finally surfaced, and it's not Mary Mahoney, or Kristin M. Mirzayan, but Monica Lewinsky. If the killing of Mary Mahoney and Kristin M. Mirzayan was to silence a bimbo eruption, They got the wrong woman. Just how many of the interns was Clinton getting oral sex from anyway? Florence Martin. Accountant subcontracting to CIA. Related to the Barry Seal case. Dead of 3 gunshot wounds to the head. At the time of her death she had the account numbers and PIN for a bank account in the Caymans in the name of Barry Seal which held $1.4 million. Immediately following her death, the money was moved to some place in the Virgin Islands. Gordon Matson. Clinton associate. Died, May 15, 1997. Shot in the head. Declared a suicide. McDougal. James McDougal. Crook. Died, March 8, 1998. Jim McDougal was serving his 3-year sentence for bank fraud at the Fort Worth Federal Medical Center in Texas, a facility operated by the Federal Bureau of Prisons for inmates who need medical attention. Just prior to another round of testimony before Kenneth Starr's grand jury, and while the reporters who were covering that story were 2 hours away covering a standoff situation in Waco that just went away, Jim McDougal suffered a heart attack while in solitary confinement. Left alone for too long, when Jim McDougal was taken out of solitary, instead of attempting to defibrillate his heart with equipment on hand at the facility, he was driven over to John Peter Smith Hospital. Not the closest hospital to the Fort Worth Federal Medical Center, John Peter Smith Hospital is a welfare hospital, where, in the words of one local, they let interns practice on deadbeats. New. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram acquired the official report of the McDougal death via a Freedom of Information Act request, and report that doctors ignored McDougal's signs of imminent death. Keith McCaskill. Witness to the train deaths. Died November 10, 1988. Keith had information on the Manor drug running and the Henry and Ives murders. Stabbed 113 times. He had told his family someone was out to kill him and told them goodbye. Charles Meissner. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for International Economic Policy. Died, May 3, 1996. John Huang was placed on a Commerce Department contract that allowed him to retain his security clearance by Charles Meissner. Charles Meissner died on the plane with Ron Brown. James Dewey Millam. Witness to Manor drug operation and Henry Ives murders. Died, 1989. Millam was decapitated. Clinton's notorious state medical examiner, Fahmy Malak, initially ruled death due to an ulcer, claiming that the victim's small dog had eaten the head, which was later recovered from a trash bin several blocks away. Charles Wilborn Miller. Vice President and board member for Altel. Died, January 12, 1999. Altel was the computer company that wrote the White House Big Brother computer system. Found shot to death with 2 guns. Multiple shots had been fired. Declared a suicide. Ron Miller. Witness. Died, October 12, 1997. Ron Miller, investigated by authorities over the sale of his company, Gage Corporation to Dynamic Energy Resources Incorporated, was the man who tape-recorded Gene and Nora Lum and turned those tapes, and other records, over to congressional oversight investigators. The Lums were sentenced to prison for campaign finance violations, using straw donors to conceal the size of their contributions to various candidates. Indeed, Dynamic Energy Resources Incorporated had hired Ron Brown's son Michael solely for the purpose of funneling $60,000 through him to the Commerce Secretary, according to Nolanda Hill's testimony. Reportedly a healthy man, Ron suddenly took ill on October 3, and steadily worsened until his death 9 days later. This pattern fits ricin poisoning, owing to the strangeness of the illness. Doctors at the Baptist Medical Center referred the matter to the Oklahoma State Medical Examiner's Office. The Oklahoma State Medical Examiner's Office promptly ran tests on samples of Ron Miller's blood, but has refused to release the results or even to confirm that the tests were ever completed. John Millis. Staff Director of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Committee. Died, June 4, 2000. Millis had just helped the CIA complete its investigation into alleged CIA cocaine smuggling, which predictably, given that Millis was himself a long-time CIA agent, concluded that the CIA was innocent of all allegations of wrongdoing. Fairfax, Virginia police were tipped off by an anonymous phone call claiming that a man was threatening suicide in a motel room. Police arrived to find Millis dead of a gunshot wound. As was the case with Vincent Foster and Sandy Hume, the death was immediately declared a suicide. Joe Montano, Chairman DNC, before Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and Regional Director for Tim Kaine, died July 25, 2016. Supposedly died of a heart attack right after the WikiLeaks email dump proving the DNC had worked to sabotage Bernie Sanders and hand the nomination to Hillary Clinton. Joe was 47, with no history of heart problems. Neil Moody died August 25, 1996. Following Vincent Foster's murder, Lisa Foster married James Moody, a judge in Arkansas, on Jan 1, 1996. Near the time Susan McDougal first went to jail for contempt, Judge Moody's son, Neil, died in a car crash. There were other reports that Neil Moody had discovered something very unsettling among his stepmother's private papers and was threatening to go public with it just prior to the beginning of the Democratic National Convention. He was alleged to have been talking to Bob Woodward of The Washington Post about a blockbuster story. Witnesses said they saw Neil Moody sitting in his car arguing with another person just prior to his car suddenly speeding off out of control and hitting a brick wall. Tony Moser, anti-corruption journalist, died June 10, 2000. Tony Moser, a critic of the Arkansas Democratic Party political machine, was killed as he crossed a street in Pine Bluff 10 days after being named a columnist for the Democrat Gazette newspaper and 2 days after writing an article which exposed the looting of programs designed to obtain money from deadbeat parents to then give to their children. Click for full-size image. The police declared that no crime had been committed since the anonymous driver of the 1995 Chevy pickup truck that struck and killed Moser was not intoxicated nor was he speeding. In Arkansas, that apparently makes it legal to run down a politically unpopular journalist. Larry Nichols, former official at ADFA and author of the Clinton Chronicles. The man who broke many of the Clinton scandal stories. Several attempts on his life, but still alive. Paul Olson, federal witness in investigations to drug money corruption in Chicago politics. Died September 8, 1994. Paul had just finished 2 days of FBI interviews when his plane ride home crashed, killing Paul and 130 others. The September 15, 1994 Tempe Tribune newspaper reported that the FBI suspected that a bomb had brought down the airplane. Jerry Luther Parks, head of Clinton's gubernatorial security team in Little Rock, died September 26, 1993. Gunned down in his car at the intersection of Channel Parkway and Cantrell Road, near Little Rock. Parks was shot through the rear window of his car. The assailant then pulled around to the driver's side of Parks' car and shot him 3 more times with a 9mm pistol. His family reported that shortly before his death, unknown persons were following them, and their home had been broken into. Despite a top-quality alarm system, Parks had been compiling a dossier on Clinton's illicit activities. The dossier was stolen. When news of the discovery of Vincent Foster's body came over the news, Parks is reported to have said, "I'm a dead man." He had told his wife that Bill Clinton's people were cleaning house, and he was next on the list. Dennis Patrick, court clerk, had millions of dollars laundered through his account at Lasseter & Co. without his knowledge. 4 attempts on his life. See Victor Razor 2. National Finance Co-Chairman, Clinton for President Campaign. Montgomery Razor, son of C. Victor Razor 2. Died July 30, 1992. Both men died in a private plane crash in Alaska, 1 day before a scheduled interview with John Hillier. The crash was blamed on the pilot, who survived. 5 others not connected to Clinton died in the crash. D.D. Myers described Razor as a major player in the Clinton organization. Victor Razor was also chairman of Mobile Telecom Technologies Corporation, whose subsidiary, SkyTel Corporation, is an international paging company used by federal police agencies such as the FBI. Victor Razor was a Washington lawyer and he was counsel to the Washington law firm of Jones Day Revis and Pogue until 1991. At his death, he was the National Finance Co-chairman of the Clinton for President campaign. The campaign's press secretary, D. Myers, described him as a major player in the Clinton organization. He and his wife had been friends of the Clintons for 10 years. He was the past National Finance Chairman of the Democratic National Committee. He served on the boards of the Democratic Business Council and the Center for National Policy and the Board of Advisors of the Democratic Leadership Council. On May 29, 1993, President Clinton announced that he had selected Razor's widow, Molly Razor, 50, former Democratic co-chair of the Women's Campaign Fund, to be his protocol chief and stated that he planned to nominate her for confirmation as an ambassador. Seth Conrad Rich, DNC Voter Expansion Data Director, died July 10, 2016. Seth Conrad Rich was shot several times in the back a block from his home in D.C.'s neighborhood of Bloomingdale. The police declared it a robbery gone bad, but nothing had been taken. Seth still had his wallet, watch, and cell phone. One possible motive for his assassination lies with the WikiLeaks dump of 20,000 DNC emails which proved the DNC was rigging the primaries to favor Hillary Clinton. The scandal forced DNC Chair W. Wasserman Schultz to resign. Although Hillary's people tried to portray this as a hack by Russia, to cast Hillary as a victim of international intrigue, WikiLeaks, while not identifying the leak, denied it was Russia, and stated it was an internal leak. If Seth, who was in a perfect position to acquire the data, were the leak, that would be ample motive to murder him, as a warning to others inside the DNC not to blow any whistles. Shortly after the killing, Redditors and social media users were pursuing a lead saying that Rich was en route to the FBI the morning of his murder, apparently intending to speak to special agents about an ongoing court case possibly involving the Clinton family. A reward has been offered for information on this murder. Jeff Rhodes, witness in the train deaths, died April 1989. Jeff had information on the death survivors, Henry and McCaskill. His burned body was found in a trash dump. He died of a gunshot wound to the head and there was some body mutilation, specifically that his hands and feet had been partially sawn off, leading to the speculation that he was tortured prior to being killed. The body was then burned. Major General William Robertson, Deputy Commanding General, V Corps, Europe. Colonel William Densberger, V Corps Chief of Operations and Plans. Colonel Robert Kelly, V Corps Chief of Intelligence. Spec. Gary Rhodes, Crew Chief. Died February 23, 1993. All were killed when their Army UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter crashed in Wiesbaden, Germany. No cause was ever determined. V Corps figured prominently in the U.S. Bosnia-Serbia peacekeeping operations, along with the carrier Roosevelt. These men, and 8 others associated with Clinton's visit to the Roosevelt, all died within 4 months of each other. Dr. Ronald Rogers, dentist from Arkansas, killed in plane crash as he was on his way to an interview with a London Sunday Telegraph reporter to reveal some Clinton dirt. Charles Ruff, Clinton lawyer, died November 20, 2000. Charles Ruff was one of Clinton's attorneys during the impeachment trial and was known to have inside information on the White House emails scandal as well. Original reports were that he died in an accident in his home, although no details were given. Then the report changed to claim that he was found in his bedroom unconscious, then declared dead on arrival at the hospital. The authorities will provide no details other than the usual, and quite premature, assurances that there was no foul play involved. Colonel James Sabo. Died, 1991. Supposedly about to blow the whistle on drug-running activity taking place on the naval base where he was stationed, Colonel James Sabo was found by his wife in the backyard of their home with his head blown off with a shotgun. The Navy ruled it a suicide. In all, more than 40 deaths by individuals concerned with drug traffic on military bases have been declared as suicides despite evidence that murder was involved. Walter Seib, Clinton White House chef. Died, June 13, 2015. Walter Seib was hired by the Clinton White House and continued to serve the Bush administration. He was reported missing by his family when he failed to return from a hike. His body was found more than 1.5 miles off of the trail he was supposed to be on, at the bottom of a river. No official cause of death has been released. Tom Schweich, Waco investigator and candidate for governor. Died, February 26, 2013. Schweich served as chief of staff for former U.S. Senator John Danforth's investigation of the federal government's actions in connection with the 1993 FBI siege of the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas. He had announced his candidacy for governor just 1 month before his death, and was found with a gunshot wound to the left temple. Tom Schweich was right-handed. 1 month later, his media director, Robert Spence Jackson, was found dead of a similar wound. Barry Seal, CIA drug pilot. Died, February 19, 1986. Now known to have been a gun and drug smuggler for the CIA, operating out of the Mena airport, Barry Seal had reportedly kept in contact with Bill Clinton's head of security at the governor's mansion, Raymond Buddy Young, the ex-rodeo clown who is now the number 2 man at FEMA. Following his fall from CIA grace, Barry was sentenced to live at a Salvation Army housing complex by a judge who also prohibited Barry Seal to either have any guns or to employ any bodyguards. Corruption doesn't become any more obvious than this. Barry was gunned down with machine gun fire in the parking lot of the Salvation Army housing complex. In violation of the court order, Barry had hired bodyguards who worked a rotation schedule. But the bodyguard who was to be there when Barry was killed never showed up. That bodyguard, according to video producer Daniel Hobzicker, was a former associate, meaning drug pilot, of Barry's named William Bear Bottoms. Bottoms prowled the internet insisting that there never was any drug-running operation at Mena, Arkansas. Bill Shelton, Arkansas State Trooper and fiancé of Kathy Ferguson. Died, June 1994. Allegedly committed suicide by shooting himself at the gravesite of his fiancée. Officer Shelton was the fiancé of Kathy Ferguson, who was the ex-wife of Trooper Danny Ferguson. Kathy Ferguson also supposedly committed suicide June 1994 when she shot herself in her living room. Oddly, next to the body were her packed bags, as if she was expecting to be going somewhere. Danny Ferguson was a co-defendant along with Bill Clinton in Paula Corbin Jones's sexual harassment suit. Kathy Ferguson was reported as a corroborating witness for Miss Jones. Victor Thorne, independent journalist. Died, August 1, 2016. Found dead of a gunshot on top of a mountain near his home, Thorne has been a thorn in the side of the Clintons for decades, writing books and articles for American Free Press that exposed many of the Clintons' dark secrets, including the drug running out of Mena, Arkansas. While officially declared a suicide, it is worth noting that Victor Thorne was at the height of his success, with a long line of successful books, including Crowning Clinton, Why Hillary Shouldn't Be in the White House and the Hillary and Bill trilogy, which were strong sellers. The trilogy had just been purchased for translation and foreign distribution. Paul Tully, Democratic National Committee Political Director. Died, September 24, 1992. Found dead in a hotel room in Little Rock, Arkansas of unknown causes. No autopsy allowed. Described by Clinton as a dear friend and trusted advisor. Tully authored several key strategies for Clinton and the party. Paul Tully, 48, Democratic National Committee political director and architect of a strategy to make the party competitive again in presidential elections, was found dead in his hotel room on September 24, 1992, in Little Rock, Arkansas of unknown causes. Authorities speculated his death was from a heart attack or stroke. In a press release, then presidential candidate Clinton called Mr. Tully a dear friend and trusted advisor. He said he was deeply saddened by the loss. Tully devised a strategy of targeting states based on their value in the Electoral College, and coordinating the presidential campaign with state and congressional races. John Parnell Walker, RTC investigator, died August 15, 1993. Mysteriously fell to his death from an apartment balcony. He was investigating the Morgan Guarantee scandal. The same apartment which was alleged to have been a secret getaway which Vince Foster may have visited. Calvin Walraven, drug witness. 24-year-old Walraven was a key witness in Jocelyn Elder's son's drug case. 10 days after Elder's son was convicted of trafficking in cocaine, Walraven was found dead in his apartment with a gunshot blast to the head. Tim Hover, a Little Rock police spokesman, said no foul play was suspected. Gary Webb, journalist, died December 10, 2004. Webb, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, exposed CIA drug trafficking operations in a series of books and reports for the San Jose Mercury News. He was found dead on Friday morning in what the police said was an apparent suicide. Webb had been shot in the head twice. Maynard Webb, Minna Airport witness. Maynard Webb had stumbled on several aircraft whose tail numbers were being changed on a regular basis. Was about to go public when he walked headfirst into a spinning propeller. Russell Welch, infected with military-grade anthrax. Alan G. Witcher, oversaw Clinton's Secret Service detail, died April 19, 1995. In October 1994, Witcher was transferred to the Secret Service field office in the Murrah Building in Oklahoma City. Whatever warning was given to the BATF agents in that building did not reach Alan Witcher, whom died in the bomb blast. Paul Wiltshire, Washington attorney investigating gun running out of Minna, Arkansas, died June 22, 1993. Found dead on a toilet in his Washington apartment. No cause of death was ever reported by the coroner. At the time of his death, he was investigating connections between the October surprise during the 1980 federal election campaign and drug and gun running out of Minna, Arkansas, as well as the BATF assault on the Waco, Texas branch of Indians. Was planning on producing a television documentary on his findings. He had delivered a 105-page affidavit to Janet Reno detailing the evidence he had collected regarding the drug operation at Minna, just 3 weeks before his death. Ed Willey, real estate attorney, Clinton fundraiser, died November 30, 1993. Died of a shotgun blast to the head. Body found in deep woods in Virginia. Ruled a suicide, no note was found. Died on the same day his wife was sexually assaulted in the White House by Bill Clinton. Intimately involved in several Clinton fundraising events. Gareth Williams, MI6 agent, died August 16, 2010. Gareth Williams, an MI6 spy who worked on both sides of the Atlantic, engaged in some unauthorized hacking by breaking into Bill Clinton's database of friends and connections, ostensibly to give to a friend in the media. This breach caused a diplomatic nightmare for MI6's new director, Sir John Sawers. Gareth was found naked, padlocked into a sports bag, in his own bathtub. No fingerprints, palm prints, footprints or traces of Williams' DNA were found at the scene. The key to the padlock was inside the bag, underneath his body. As usual, declared a suicide. The sheer absurdity of this claim provoked a public uproar, and the promoters of the suicide theory even went so far as to try to demonstrate how Williams could have inserted himself into the bag. but even this charade failed to convince anyone, and the police were finally forced to acknowledge Williams' murder, even to the point of admitting they had two suspects in the crime, who were never arrested. John Augustus Wilson, former Washington, D.C. council member, died May 18, 1993. Wilson claimed to have info on Whitewater, a political controversy that began with the real estate dealings of Bill and Hillary Clinton and their associates, Jim and Susan McDougal, in the Whitewater Development Corporation, a failed business venture in the 1970s and 1980s, and was willing to talk. Found hanged. Declared a suicide. Jim Wilhite, Vice Chairman, Arkla Incorporated, died December 21, 1992. Died in a one-person skiing accident. Wilhite had extensive ties with Clinton and Mac McClatty, with whom he visited by telephone just hours before his death. Theodore Williams Jr., Betty Curry's brother, died December 16, 1997. A passing car hit the brother of Presidential Secretary Betty Curry after his own car had somehow run off the road. Bill Clinton called Monica Lewinsky at 2 a.m. the next morning to tell her of the death and alert Monica that her name appeared on the Paula Jones witness list. Betty's brother had also been beaten shortly before Betty testified in a previous matter. Steve Willis, Robert Williams, Conway LeBleur, Todd McKeon. Clinton Bodyguards, died February 28, 1993. Executed by gunfire in the Waco, Texas assault on the Branch Davidians. All four were examined by a private doctor and died from nearly identical wounds to the left temple, so-called execution style. According to Linda Thompson, videotapes and other evidence indicates that none died from guns fired by Branch Davidians. In his address to employees of the Treasury Department in the cash room on March 18, 1993, Clinton said, "My prayers and I'm sure yours are still with the families of all four of the alcohol, tobacco and firearms agents who were killed in Waco, Todd McKeon and Conway LeBleur of New Orleans, Steve Willis of Houston, and Robert Williams from my hometown of Little Rock. 3 of those 4 were assigned to my security during the course of the primary or general election." However, the Little Rock, Arkansas office of the ATF confirmed that all 4 had at one point been bodyguards for Bill Clinton, 3 while he was campaigning for president, and while he had been governor of Arkansas. In the videotape by the American Justice Federation, Waco 2, The Big Lie continues, Linda Thompson demonstrates that 15 shots were fired from 6 separate weapons into and out of a room into which 3 of the 4 agents had entered through a window. 4 of these shots were fired from an overhead helicopter, an agent outside the window, firing an MP5 submachine gun, who also threw in a concussion grenade, fired at least 2 shots into the room. In the autopsies of these agents, 3 had virtually identical wounds to the left temple that exited through the rear of the head, execution style. A private physician treated all 4. Barbara Wise, Commerce Department staffer, died November 29, 1996. As the scandals continued to swirl around the John Huang, one of Huang's associates, Barbara Wise, was found dead in her locked office on the 4th floor of the Department of Commerce, partially nude, by one report completely nude, and covered with bruises. No cause of death has ever been announced even though an autopsy was conducted, prior to next of kin being notified. Calls to the D.C. autopsist, Dr. Jardmal, have gotten an assurance that the bruises were not from being beaten but nothing else. Despite claims of ongoing illness, no record of a hospital visit in the months leading up to her death has surfaced. Oddly enough, following the discovery of her body, Bill Clinton made an unscheduled return to the White House from Camp David, claiming he needed a book of poetry in order to complete his inauguration speech. Richard Winters, suspect in the death survives and Henry, died July 1989. Winters offered to cooperate. He was killed by a shotgun blast to the face during a robbery which was subsequently proven to be a setup. Dan Harmon, The prosecutor who Winters reportedly made the offer to, was implicated in the Kevin Ives deaths and was jailed for running his office as a criminal enterprise to extort narcotics and cash, proof that elements of Arkansas law enforcement were corrupted by drugs during Bill Clinton's tenure as governor. Terrence He, first police officer to arrive at the Murrah building following the OK City bombing, died May 8, 1996. Terrence He had collected together a vast amount of hard data on the bombing of the Murrah building. Terrence He's patrol car was found abandoned along a dirt road, the front seat covered with blood. Officer He himself was found a short distance away, with 11 cut wounds on both arms and 2 in his throat, plus a gunshot through the head. No gun was ever found, and the death was declared a suicide. His material on the OK City bombing was never found following his death. His life had been threatened. Sadly, the list goes on.